The challenge. The message came on what should have been an ordinary Tuesday morning. The massive holographic projection appeared simultaneously in every major city on Earth, its crystalline geometric patterns forming into the image of a being that humanity had never seen before. The alien's form was elegant yet predatory, like a praying mantis made of living crystal, with multifaceted eyes that seemed to contain entire galaxies within them. People of Earth, the being's voice resonated in perfect English, though no mouth was visible. I am High Commander Xerix of the Crystalline Confederation. For 3 of your Earth years, we have observed your civilization from the edges of your solar system. We have watched your petty conflicts, your inefficient governance, your primitive spacecraft barely reaching your own moon. Your potential is wasted by your chaotic nature. The image is shifted, showing massive crystalline ships emerging from fold space around Jupiter's orbit. Each vessel was the size of a small city, their surfaces refracting sunlight in impossible patterns. We are the shepherds of order in this galaxy. 300 species prosper under our guidance. Your resistance would be futile. Your most powerful weapons would barely scratch our hulls. You have 48 Earth hours to submit to our authority and begin your integration into the Confederation. Resist, and we will be forced to demonstrate our power in ways your species cannot survive. Dr. Elena Santos watched the transmission from the United Earth Council chamber in Geneva, her dark eyes narrowed in concentration. As Earth's leading xenoanthropologist, she had spent her career studying the theoretical social structures of potential alien civilizations. Now, facing the real thing, her mind was already racing with analysis. They're lying, she announced to the chamber of world leaders, many of whom were still pale with shock. Or at least, they're not telling us everything. Secretary General Chen turned to her, his expression grave. Explain, Doctor. Elena stood, using her neural interface to project her own holographic display. Look at their language choices, their presentation. Everything about this is theatrical, designed to intimidate. A truly superior force wouldn't need such dramatics. More importantly, they're pushing for a fast surrender, which means they're operating under time pressure themselves. She highlighted certain patterns in the crystalline ships. These vessels show signs of strain, microfractures in their structure that they're trying to hide with those light refractions. And notice how the High Commander emphasized their role as shepherds and spoke of guidance rather than pure dominance. This isn't a simple conquest. They're recruiting. The chamber erupted in overlapping conversations, but Elena continued, her voice cutting through the chaos. I don't think they have 300 species under their control, at least not willingly. I think they're facing some kind of crisis, and they're desperately collecting client species to help them face it. The question is, what are they really afraid of? Secretary General Chen leaned forward. How does this help us, Doctor? Their ships are still technologically superior to anything we possess. Elena smiled, the kind of smile that had made her famous in academic circles, the smile of someone who had just solved a fascinating puzzle. Because they've already made a crucial mistake. They've judged us by their standards, assuming that technological advancement is the only measure of civilization. They see our diversity, our disagreements, our constant questioning and changing of ideas as weakness. They don't understand that chaos isn't our flaw. It's our strength. She brought up new projections, showing the patterns of human social networks, the incredible complexity of Earth's cultural interconnections. The Crystalline Confederation, based on their name and appearance alone, likely operates on principles of rigid order and hierarchy. They probably can't even conceive of how we manage to function without a single unified direction. But that's exactly why we're going to surprise them. What are you suggesting? Chen asked, though his expression suggested he was already beginning to understand. They've given us 48 hours to surrender. I suggest we use that time to show them something they've never seen before, a species that thrives on adaptation rather than order. We don't need to fight their ships. We need to show them why their entire understanding of civilization is incomplete. The chamber was silent now, all eyes on Elena as she laid out her plan. It was audacious, perhaps even foolhardy, but it played to humanity's greatest strengths: our creativity, our adaptability, and our ability to understand and connect with the utterly alien. As Elena finished speaking, a slow smile spread across Chen's face. They expect us to either surrender or attempt a futile military resistance. Instead, we're going to offer them something they don't even know they need: a completely new way of seeing the universe. Elena nodded. Exactly. They think they're here to conquer us. Instead, we're going to transform them, not with weapons, but with ideas. The strategist. The next 40 hours were a whirlwind of activity that demonstrated exactly what Elena had been trying to explain to the Crystalline Confederation. Humans, when faced with an impossible challenge, didn't follow a single orderly response. They exploded into countless simultaneous initiatives, each person and group approaching the problem from different angles. While military leaders prepared defensive positions, just in case, thousands of linguists worldwide were analyzing every nuance of Zurich's speech. Anthropologists and sociologists formed rapid response think tanks to theorize about crystalline social structures. Astronomers and physicists studied the alien ship's movements, noting patterns that suggested their seemingly perfect formations were actually compensating for structural weaknesses. Elena worked through the night, coordinating with teams across the globe. Her apartment in Geneva had transformed into a command center, holographic displays showing incoming data from every continent. Her AI assistant, ARIA, helped her sort through the flood of information, identifying patterns that supported her initial theories. The fracture patterns in their ship's crystalline structure are increasing at an exponential rate, ARIA reported, displaying the latest analysis. At the current progression, they'll reach critical instability within 3 Earth months. Elena nodded, adding this to her growing picture of the Confederation's true situation. They're dying, she said softly. Their entire civilization is literally crystallizing, becoming too rigid to adapt. That's why they're so desperate to collect new species. They need fresh perspectives, new ways of thinking, even if they don't realize it themselves. Her neural interface pinged with an incoming call from Dr. James Chen, the Secretary General's son, and one of Earth's leading experts in complex systems theory. His holographic avatar appeared in her living room, looking as tired as she felt. Elena, we've been analyzing the electromagnetic emissions from their ships, he said without preamble. There's something fascinating in the quantum signature. Their entire technology seems to operate on principles of perfect resonance, every system vibrating in precise harmony, which would make them incredibly efficient, Elena mused, but also catastrophically vulnerable to disruption. One wrong frequency. Exactly. But here's the really interesting part. We're detecting subtle variations in the resonance patterns. It's like their technology is trying to evolve, to find new harmonies, but their rigid control systems keep forcing it back to the perfect frequency. Elena felt a surge of excitement. This was exactly what she'd been looking for. Proof that even the Confederation's technology was suffering from their inability to adapt and change. Her mind raced with the implications, seeing how this physical manifestation mirrored what she suspected about their social structure. James, I need you to help me prepare a presentation. We have less than 8 hours before their deadline, and what we show them has to be perfect, or perfectly imperfect, rather. The next few hours were a blur of preparation. Elena coordinated with artists, musicians, dancers, scientists, and philosophers from every corner of Earth. What they were preparing wasn't a traditional diplomatic response or a military strategy. It was something uniquely human, a demonstration of the power of controlled chaos and creative adaptation. As the deadline approached, Elena stood before the United Earth Council again, this time to present their response plan. The chamber was packed, with additional participants joining via hologram from around the world. The Crystalline Confederation expects either submission or resistance, she began. Instead, we're going to offer them an experience. We'll transmit our response on all frequencies, using their own crystalline technology's resonance patterns as a carrier wave. But the content will be pure humanity. She gestured, and the chamber filled with a preview of what they had prepared. It was a symphony of human achievement, not just our greatest accomplishments, but our failures, our recoveries, our constant cycle of creation and reinvention. Art morphed into science, music into mathematics, dance into physics. It showed humans arguing, collaborating, competing, and cooperating. It showed our conflicts and our reconciliations, our destruction and our renewal. They see our chaos as weakness because they don't understand that controlled chaos is the most powerful creative force in the universe. Life itself evolved through a process of structured randomness, mutation and natural selection. Human consciousness, human society, human progress all follow the same pattern. We're going to show them what they're missing, what they desperately need but don't know how to ask for. Secretary General Chen studied the display thoughtfully. And you believe this will prevent them from attacking? More than that, Elena said confidently. I believe it will save them from themselves. Their rigid perfection is killing them. We're going to offer them something better. The perfect imperfection of life itself. As she finished speaking, new data flowed in from the observation posts near Jupiter. The crystalline ships were moving, their formation shifting into an attack pattern exactly as predicted by Earth's analysts. They had studied human military capabilities and prepared for every conventional response. They weren't prepared for what happened next. Earth's response began with a single note, a pure tone that matched the resonant frequency of the crystalline ships. But then it began to change, to evolve, incorporating new harmonies that shouldn't have worked together but somehow did. The transmission carried the mathematical beauty of Bach, the controlled chaos of jazz, the raw emotion of rock and roll, all translated into pure energy patterns that played across the crystalline surfaces of the alien ships. And within those patterns was encoded humanity's message, not in words, but in pure information, in art, in music, in dance, in the complex interplay of order and chaos that defined human civilization. It was an invitation not to surrender, but to dance. The massive ships hung in space, their perfect formation wavering for the first time as their crystalline surfaces rippled with unexpected colors. On screens across Earth, High Commander Zurich's image appeared again, but this time the crystalline face showed something new. Uncertainty. And Elena Santos smiled, because uncertainty was exactly where transformation began. The connection. The response from the Crystalline Confederation wasn't what anyone expected, not even Elena. Instead of either attacking or retreating, their ships began to move in entirely new patterns, breaking their perfect geometric formations. The crystalline surfaces of their vessels pulsed with colors that human instruments couldn't even properly measure, creating what one poet immediately dubbed a symphony of light. Then silence. For 6 long hours, Earth waited. Elena spent those hours in deep consultation with her global network of colleagues, analyzing every bit of data they could gather from the alien ships. The energy readings were fascinating, suggesting that the Confederation's vessels were experiencing something akin to quantum entanglement decay, but in a controlled, almost rhythmic pattern. Their processing, she explained to the emergency session of the United Earth Council. Their entire civilization operates like a massive crystalline computer. Our transmission didn't just send them information. It introduced new computational patterns into their system. We showed them that there are other ways to process reality. The response, when it finally came, was nothing like the grand proclamation that had started this encounter. Instead, a single crystalline being appeared in Elena's apartment, a hologram so perfect it was almost indistinguishable from reality. It wasn't High Commander Zurich's, but a smaller entity, its crystalline form showing subtle imperfections that Elena immediately recognized as signs of individuality. I am Third Resonator Lyrics. The being introduced itself. We request clarification. Elena felt her heart race with excitement, but kept her voice calm and professional. Of course. What would you like me to clarify? Your transmission. It contains patterns we have never encountered. Harmonies that should not be stable, yet somehow achieve stability through their very instability. How is this possible? Elena smiled. That's a very human question, Lyrics. The fact that you're asking it suggests you're already beginning to understand. She gestured to her holographic interface, bringing up a real-time display of Earth's internet traffic, a chaos of connections, information flowing in seemingly random patterns that nonetheless created a functional whole. Human civilization works the same way. We don't achieve stability through rigid control, but through constant adaptation. Every discord becomes part of a larger harmony. Lyrics's crystalline form shifted, refracting light in new patterns that Elena's instruments suggested indicated deep thought, or perhaps distress. The Confederation achieves perfection through unity. All must resonate at the same frequency. This is the foundation of our civilization. And how is that working out? Elena asked gently. Your ships are showing increasing signs of structural stress. Your technology is fighting against its own nature, trying to maintain perfect patterns that can't sustain themselves. You're dying, aren't you? The crystalline being's form flickered. How did you? Because that's what happens to any system that doesn't allow for change and growth. Perfect order is stagnation. Life, real, vibrant life, exists in the balance between order and chaos. Over the next few hours, Elena and Lyrics engaged in a conversation that would later be studied by xenoanthropologists for decades. They discussed everything from quantum physics to music theory, from social structures to the nature of consciousness itself. With each exchange, Elena could see subtle changes in Lyrics's crystalline structure, tiny imperfections appearing, and rather than being corrected, remaining as new aspects of the being's individual pattern. Meanwhile, across the solar system, the Confederation's ships were changing too. Their perfect formations had dissolved completely, each vessel now moving in its own unique pattern while somehow maintaining a complex, jazz-like harmony with the others. Earth's sensors detected massive energy fluctuations as the ship's crystalline structures began to reorganize themselves, finding new ways to maintain stability through controlled imperfection. But not everyone in the Confederation was ready for such radical change. Suddenly, High Commander Zerix's image appeared again, this time showing visible signs of distress in its crystalline structure. This is blasphemy. The commander's voice boomed. We are the perfection of order. We cannot allow these chaos bringers to infect us with their discord. Lyrics's hologram straightened, its crystal structure now showing clear signs of individuality. Commander, with respect, I must disagree. The humans aren't bringing chaos. They're showing us a new kind of order. A sustainable order. Look at your own structure, Commander. The rigid patterns are breaking down. We can either adapt or shatter. The confrontation that followed was like nothing human observers had ever seen. The Confederation's ships began to split into two groups, those embracing the new patterns and those trying desperately to maintain the old order. But it wasn't a traditional battle. Instead, it was more like a debate conducted through pure energy and light, each side presenting its case through complex resonance patterns that human scientists would spend years trying to fully understand. Elena watched with a mixture of fascination and concern. She had hoped to help the Confederation evolve, but she hadn't anticipated the process being quite so dramatic. The fate of two civilizations now hung in the balance, depending on how this philosophical conflict played out. As the energy patterns reached a crescendo, Elena noticed something extraordinary. The ships maintaining rigid formation were beginning to show severe structural stress, while those that had adopted more flexible patterns were actually growing stronger, their crystalline surfaces developing new, more resilient configurations. It was evolution happening in real time, and it was beautiful. The revolution, the transformation of the crystalline confederation, unfolded like a symphony reaching its crescendo. High Commander Xerxes' faction, clinging to rigid perfection, found their ship's crystalline structures becoming increasingly brittle. Meanwhile, the vessels that had embraced change were evolving into something entirely new, their surfaces flowing like liquid crystal while maintaining their structural integrity. Elena worked tirelessly with lyrics and a growing network of reformed Confederation members, helping them understand and navigate their transformation. Her apartment had become a nexus of interstellar diplomacy, filled with holographic representations of crystalline beings all experiencing individuality for the first time. "It's like waking up," one of them explained, its form shimmering with new patterns. "We were all one note in an endless, unchanging chord. Now we're learning to sing." But Xerxes wasn't going down without a fight. The commander's remaining loyal ships suddenly began to move into attack formation, not aimed at Earth, but at their own transformed brethren. "If we cannot maintain perfection," Xerxes' voice boomed across all frequencies, "then we must purge the impurity." What happened next would be debated by historians for generations. The loyal ships fired their weapons, beams of pure crystalline energy that should have shattered their targets. But the transformed ships, their structures now fluid and adaptive, didn't break. Instead, they absorbed the energy, their patterns shifting and flowing to accommodate the attack. "You can't break us anymore," lyrics broadcasted, their voice carrying a new harmony that seemed to resonate with the fundamental frequency of space itself. "We're no longer rigid enough to shatter." Elena watched the confrontation through multiple holographic feeds, her mind racing. She could see that Xerxes' ships were approaching critical instability, their rigid adherence to perfect patterns making them increasingly vulnerable to their own energy emissions. If they didn't stop soon, they would destroy themselves. "Lyrics," she called out, "we need to save them from themselves. Can your transformed ships project the harmony patterns we developed?" "Yes, but they're rejecting all external frequencies." "Then we need to show them something new. Not Earth's patterns, not the Confederation's old patterns, but something created together, here and now." What followed was perhaps the most unusual battle in human history. The transformed ships began to move in complex patterns around their former comrades, generating harmonics that human scientists would later describe as quantum jazz. Each ship contributed its own unique frequency while maintaining a complex resonance with the others. Earth's broadcasting stations joined in, adding layers of human music and mathematics to the symphony. The effect on Xerxes' ships was immediate and dramatic. The rigid crystalline structures began to vibrate in sympathy with the new harmonies, their perfect patterns starting to flow and shift despite their commander's resistance. Some of the ships tried to maintain their rigid formation, but the very energy they expended in the effort only made them more susceptible to the transformative frequencies surrounding them. Xerxes' flagship held out the longest, its massive crystalline form blazing with energy as it fought against the change. Elena watched the readings with growing concern. The ship was approaching catastrophic resonance cascade. "Commander," she broadcast directly to Xerxes, "your ship is breaking apart. Please, let go of the old patterns. Change doesn't mean death, it means evolution. We are perfection." Xerxes' voice was distorted now, breaking apart like their ship. "We cannot become. Become what?" Elena pressed. "Alive? Individual? Look at your people, Commander. They're not just surviving. They're flourishing. True perfection isn't static. It's the perfect balance between order and chaos, between unity and individuality." The energy readings from Xerxes' flagship reached critical levels. But just as Elena was about to give up hope, something remarkable happened. The ship's crystalline structure began to change, not shattering, but reorganizing itself in entirely new patterns. The rigid geometric forms flowed like water, then reformed into something that combined the best of both states, a crystalline structure that could flow and adapt while maintaining its essential nature. Through the holographic feeds, Elena watched as Xerxes' form underwent a similar transformation. The commander's perfectly symmetrical crystal structure gained new facets, new patterns, new possibilities. When Zurich spoke again, their voice carried harmonics that had never been heard before. "I understand now," Zurich said softly. "We sought to perfect the universe by forcing it into unchanging patterns, but the universe itself is change. We were fighting against the very nature of existence." The remaining ships of the old guard followed their commander's example, their structures flowing and reforming into new configurations. The space around Jupiter became a dance of light and energy as the entire crystalline confederation discovered a new way of being, not ruled by rigid perfection, but guided by the principles of adaptive harmony. Earth's scientists scrambled to document and understand the transformation they were witnessing. It wasn't just a social or political change. The Confederation's technology, their very physical form, was evolving before their eyes. They were becoming something that had never existed before, a civilization that combined crystalline precision with organic adaptability. The New Dawn. 1 year after the transformation of the Crystalline Confederation, Elena Santos stood on the observation deck of Harmony Station, the first joint human crystalline space station orbiting Earth. Below her, the blue marble of her homeworld spun serenely, while above, the transformed ships of the Confederation created ever-changing patterns of light against the star-filled backdrop of space. "The Council of Harmonies is ready to begin," Lyrics announced. "Shall we?" Elena nodded, following them into the station's central chamber. The room was a perfect blend of human and crystalline architecture, organic curves supporting geometric patterns that shifted and flowed with the movements of its occupants. Representatives from Earth and the Confederation gathered around a table that seemed to be made of living crystal and flowing metal. High Commander Zurich, now bearing the title of First Harmonist, led the session. Their once rigidly perfect form now displayed complex, ever-changing patterns that somehow maintained an underlying order in their apparent chaos. "1 year ago," Zurich began, "we came to Earth believing we would find a primitive species in need of our guidance. Instead, we found teachers who showed us what we had forgotten. That true strength lies not in unchanging perfection, but in the ability to grow, to adapt, to embrace change while maintaining one's essential nature." The meeting that followed was unlike any diplomatic gathering in human history. Ideas flowed freely between the species, each bringing their unique perspectives to the challenges they faced together. The Confederation's deep understanding of cosmic harmonies complemented humanity's creative chaos, leading to solutions neither species could have conceived alone. They discussed the establishment of new colonies, the development of hybrid technologies, and the creation of educational exchanges. But more importantly, they talked about the future, not just of their two species, but of the galaxy itself. "We've received responses from 15 of the species we once dominated," Zurich reported, their form showing patterns of regret mixed with hope. "They're interested in joining our new alliance, especially after seeing how we've changed." Elena smiled, remembering how this had all started with a threat of conquest. "They're not joining the Confederation anymore, are they? They're joining something new, something we're all still creating together." "The Harmonic Alliance," Lyrics chimed in, their crystalline form resonating with excitement. "A union of species based not on domination or rigid hierarchy, but on the principle of adaptive harmony." As the meeting continued, Elena found herself reflecting on the true nature of humanity's strength. It hadn't been military might or technological advancement that had turned potential conquerors into allies. It had been humanity's core characteristics, our adaptability, our creativity, our ability to see patterns in chaos and find harmony in difference. The Confederation had come expecting to teach humanity about order and perfection. Instead, they had learned something far more valuable, that perfection isn't a fixed state, but a continuous process of growth and adaptation. As the session wound down, Elena's attention was drawn to a new pattern forming in the station's crystalline walls, a complex mathematical sequence that combined Fibonacci spirals with quantum harmonics in a way that would have been impossible a year ago. It was neither purely human nor purely crystalline, but something entirely new. Beautiful, isn't it? Layrix observed, noticing her attention. It's a perfect metaphor for what we're creating together. The pattern maintains order while constantly evolving, each change making it stronger rather than weaker. That's the real lesson in all of this, Alina replied. Strength isn't about being unbreakable. It's about knowing how to change without losing yourself in the process. Later that evening, as Alina prepared to return to Earth, she paused for one last look at the view. The transformed Confederation ships were performing what they called a harmony dance, their crystalline forms flowing through space in patterns that combine mathematical precision with artistic beauty. Earth hung below, its cities glowing with new lights that pulsed in synchronization with the crystalline harmonies. It was, she reflected, a perfect image of what humanity had always been best at, not just surviving change, but embracing it, learning from it, and using it to create something new and wonderful. The Confederation had come looking for submission and found partnership instead. They had sought to impose their version of perfection on humanity, only to discover that true perfection was something that could only be achieved together, through the endless dance of adaptation and growth. As her shuttle departed from Harmony Station, Alina thought about the message they had sent into space 1 year ago. The transmission that had started all of this. It hadn't just been a defense against invasion. It had been an invitation to dance. And now, that dance was spreading across the galaxy, one species at a time, creating a future that none of them could have imagined alone.